Functional behavior. Kids are not dumb. They're very smart. They only do what works for them. They give up behavior that does not work. There's got to be a payoff. Behavior that pays off is worth the effort. Behavior that does not pay off is abandoned. And that's a factor. If your kids are whining, why are they whining? Because it pays off in your home. I want to tell you that kids learn to adapt to the situation. They learn to adapt to every different class at school. Would you believe it? Some teachers are strict and some are not, and they act like an idiot in some class and they're scared to open their face in another class. Is that right? And they adapt. They go to church, they adapt to one environment. They go to school, they adapt to another environment. There's another environment with the kids in the schoolyard. Is that true? Another environment at home. Another environment at dad's house and grandma's house or mama's house. And they learn to adapt. These kids are adapters. They will survive wherever you put them. And if it pays off to work and be good and to be honest and to save your money and to be sweet and pleasant, they will learn to do that if that's what's rewarding. On the other hand, if it's rewarding and they can get away with being stinky and steal things and be nasty and not work, they will do that, some of them. Do you believe me? That's what happens. Then why do some kids whine and beg, fight and quarrel, ditch chores, while others act pleasant and kind? It's all the same. Some work hard and are cooperative, earn and save, they defer gratification. Why? Because kids do whatever pays off for them. And you have to understand that. If they're cleaning their bedrooms, it's paying off. If they're not, it's not. If you go home tonight and there's dishes in the sink, you are not on the token economy. Because the kids on the token economy would have jumped in and done those dishes. Because they'd do the work quick. What factor more than anything else influences our choice of behavior? In need, you tattoo on one eyelid. So under one eyelid, you tattoo need. On the other eyelid, on the backside, you tattoo what? What's the other great concept? Why do we make the choices we make? What factor more than anything else influences our choice of behavior? What is it? Consequences, absolutely. Anticipated consequences. People get married for anticipated consequences. They plant seeds for anticipated consequences. They avoid certain people for anticipated consequences. Is this true? Everything you do is anticipated consequence, and you're choosing all the time. Now let me ask you this. A mother rushes into a burning building to save her little baby. And in the process, she burns off her hair and scars her face for life. Does this still hold true? Yeah. Does it? People lay down on the plains and die. They go to war and give their lives. Does this still hold true? The consequences of saving their families and keeping their families free or whatever. Do you understand? We're always making evaluations. And we trade the not so dear for the more dear. The more valuable. Anticipated consequences. Rewards and punishments are called consequences. There's natural consequences and there are logical consequences. How many of you mothers take their lunch to the school if the kid forgets it? How many of you would do that? Some of you shaking your head, some of you saying, yeah, I do. If the little Herkimer forgets his lunch and you take it to school and you rescue him, you're teaching him you can be irresponsible and I will support you. I will safety net your life. And we train the child to be irresponsible. When you reward kids for being irresponsible, when you rescue them for being irresponsible, you're training them to be irresponsible. I don't know if I said that right. When you rescue kids from the painful consequences of their irresponsible decisions, you are teaching them to be irresponsible. You are rewarding them for being irresponsible. And you're setting them up to be irresponsible. And then they say, well, we never trained them like this. Who did? You know? You think the Martians are sneaking in at night and whispering in the kids' ear? Here's really how to frost your mother in the morning. This will kill her, man. You know, do you think they're doing that? No, we train our kids. This one mother told me, I hate my boys. I had 2 boys. I hate them both. They've ruined my life. They're just like their father. They argue, they complain, they won't clean up, they mess up my life. It's terrible. They fight and quarrel. I can't stand them. I said, come on. Mothers don't hate their kids. She says, oh, I do. I've thought about it, and deep down, I hate them. She says, I fantasize them getting run over on the way home from school. I said, that's terrible. That's terrible. Mamas don't hate their little boys. She says, I do. I hate them. They've ruined my life. They're awful people. I said, well, let me talk to them. So I talked to them for about a half hour. And she says, well, what do you think? I says, I hate them too. They're terrible. What have you done to them? She says, we didn't raise them like that. I says, oh yeah, you did. Nobody else did. You raised them. You taught them to fight and be into power all the time. And to quarrel and to be contentious. That evidently is what's paying off in your home. And that's what they're doing. They are survivors. And if that didn't pay off, they would quit. Does this make sense? And now what I was doing is not condemning her. I was empowering her. One of the great problems that we have in parenting is that we go home and we try to make the kids change. You can't make kids change because they're adapters. They adapt to the environment, and they're adapted perfectly to the environment that you've created. Now, if you want to change these kids, you change the environment, and they will automatically adapt. Do you believe that? Did I tell you I put my boys in the Marine Corps right out of high school for 6 months training? Did I tell you that already? It's called attitude adjustment. They haven't been able to make their bed straight for 18 years, and a guy in a little green uniform just explains it different, I guess. And they do it. I went to visit my son halfway through this, what do they call it, the Marine Corps, MCRD, Recruit Depot, or whatever it is down in San Diego. And David was halfway through, and I went down to see him, and he stood there, boy, clean shaven, he stood there rigid as a pole, with his hat down right there, and he just looked sharp. I says, "Hi, David." He says, "Papa." "Yes, sir." I said, "Are they treating you good?" "Yes, sir." "Are you okay, David?" "Yes, sir." "David, is that you?" "Yes, sir." I turned to Mom and says, "I like it." No smart mouth. But he came out of there a great man. He's a major in the Marine Corps today, but he wouldn't make his bed. But he learned. People adapt. Now, you're going to take your kid his lunch to school because little Herkimer forgot his lunch, poor little thing. You're going to run his lunch, poor little Herkimer. Why, he'd forget his head if it wasn't attached to it, wouldn't he? And we just shove these little dummies out the door every morning. And off they go to school. "You got your shoes on? Did you wear underwear today? You got your underwear? Let me see. Okay, got your underwear. Okay, and where's your coat? Where's your hat? Where's your lunch? Where's your little robot? Okay, blah, 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 blah. We love you, blah, 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 okay." And you treat him like an idiot, like he's incompetent. Now you're going to start teaching them. Fix your own lunch and take it, or you can go hungry. I suggest you take something to school and stick it in your desk like a granola bar or something. "Well, okay, good." Can you tell kids anything? No, they haven't suffered through it. And so you send the kid off, and off he goes to school. And you see his lunch sitting right there. And you don't say anything. Can you stand it, mothers? Can you stand it? You've done it? Can you stand it? There, the little Herkimer's walking out the door. And don't say something. "Have you forgotten anything?" You just sit there and say, "Herkimer." Just put something over your mouth. It's sitting right there. In a little while, what happens? The teacher calls from school. "This is Mrs. Brown. Herkimer came to school without his lunch. Are you going to run it over?" And you say, "No." And she says, "How come?" "I'm trying to teach my son responsibility. He has to learn to take his own lunch. I can't be waiting on him all the time. I'm trying to raise a boy that's responsible." "Well, aren't you going to bring his lunch over?" "No." "Well, how come?" "Well, frankly, Mrs. Brown," you say, "I ate it." And I want you to tell Herkimer Mama loves him. And that the brownie with that really thick chocolate, it was so good. But Mama loves him. Click. I taught school. I know how to put the guilt on these parents. No, we tell you. You know, a kid's a reflection of the home, you know. And about 2 o'clock, she calls back. "This is Mrs. Brown up at the school. Herkimer didn't have any lunch, so I gave him $2. I lent him $2 to have lunch." And you say, "Oh?" And then there's this long silence where you don't say anything. Remember, whoever talks next loses. So you just sit there and hold it. She says, "Well, you going to set it up in the morning?" "No." "I gave your hungry little Herkimer $2 for lunch and you're not going to pay me back?" "That's right." "Well, I think that's terrible. Why aren't you going to pay me back?" "Well, first of all, I do not want to reinforce your codependency. And second, I'm trying to raise a responsible son, and so I'm not going to pay." "That's terrible. I gave your son $2 and you're not going to pay me back?" "Are you listening to yourself, Mrs. Brown?" "Yeah." "What did you say?" "I lent Herkimer." "Who'd you lend it to?" "Herkimer, your hungry little Herkimer." And then you tell her, "Well, it's really none of my business, but I don't think that was a very good investment. Because his credit is trash around here. But if you figure some way to get some money out of him, would you let me know? He owes me $10 too. His credit's bad." Well, click. About 2 or 3 times after lending him $2, what's this teacher going to say? "You're hungry, you can go hungry, you little flake, until you pay me back my $6. See, what is a conservative? It's a liberal that got mugged. Is that right? Huh? Is that right? So these bleeding hearts, when it's their money, it's all over. "Well, you can just go without. You better bring an apple." Do you understand? That is a natural consequence. That's a natural consequence. You just let it happen. Now, you can't let a kid play in the street and get killed, can you? Can you? You cannot do that. All right? All right, what's a logical consequence?